The day the town council laughed at 12-year-old Ethan Parker was the day they made the biggest mistake of their lives. To them, Ethan was just a quiet kid who spent most of his afternoons riding his bicycle and drawing maps in a worn-out notebook. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't someone with power. But what they didn't know was that Ethan had been paying attention. And his hand-drawn map was about to expose a scheme that had been hidden for years. It all started when a wealthy development company announced plans to build a luxury shopping center on the edge of town. The project promised jobs, new businesses, and economic growth. Most residents were excited. The mayor stood proudly at public meetings, talking about the bright future ahead. Several council members praised the project. Everything seemed perfect. Except for one problem. The shopping center would require clearing a large section of Willow Creek Nature Preserve, a place where local families had spent generations hiking, fishing, and enjoying the outdoors. Many residents were upset. But whenever they raised concerns, officials insisted everything had been reviewed properly. The environmental studies are complete. The boundaries are legal. The project follows all regulations. Eventually, most people gave up fighting. Most people. But not Ethan. For years, Ethan had explored every trail in Willow Creek. He knew the area better than anyone. He carried a notebook everywhere and loved drawing detailed maps of the woods, streams, and old landmarks. While adults argued at meetings, Ethan kept noticing something strange. The official maps shown by the developers didn't match what he saw in real life. At first, he thought he was mistaken. After all, he was just a kid. Surely professional surveyors knew more than he did. But the more he compared his observations with the public documents, the more suspicious he became. One afternoon, Ethan spread dozens of sketches across his bedroom floor. He studied every trail he had drawn over the years. Then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. An entire section of protected wetland had disappeared from the developer's map. Not moved. Not renamed. Gone. According to the official documents, the land didn't exist. But Ethan had walked through that wetland countless times. He knew exactly where it was. The next day, he rode his bike back to Willow Creek. Armed with a measuring tape, notebook, and camera, he carefully documented everything. For hours, he compared landmarks, tree lines, and stream crossings. By sunset, he was convinced. Someone had altered the boundaries. And if that was true, the entire project could be illegal. Excited, Ethan brought his findings to a town council meeting. The room was packed. Residents listened politely as speaker after speaker discussed the project. Finally, Ethan stepped forward. The audience seemed amused. A few people smiled. Some chuckled. After all, what could a 12-year-old possibly contribute? Holding his notebook, Ethan explained what he had discovered. Several council members exchanged amused glances. One even rolled his eyes. When Ethan presented his hand-drawn map, laughter spread through parts of the room. A professional consultant stood and dismissed him immediately. "Son, real surveying isn't done with colored pencils." The room erupted with laughter. Embarrassed but determined, Ethan sat down. For a moment, it seemed like nobody believed him. But one person did. Sitting near the back was retired civil engineer Robert Hayes. Robert had spent 40 years reviewing land surveys and infrastructure projects. Something about Ethan's confidence caught his attention. After the meeting, Robert approached him. "Can I see your maps?" Ethan handed over the notebook. Robert expected childish sketches. Instead, he found years of remarkably detailed observations. Every stream. Every trail. Every landmark. Carefully documented. The more he looked, the more concerned he became. 2 days later, Robert began investigating. Using publicly available records, historical surveys, and satellite imagery, he compared Ethan's maps with official development documents. What he discovered shocked him. Ethan was right. The protected wetland had been removed from several key filings. Even worse, property boundaries appeared to have been shifted in ways that benefited the developers. Robert immediately contacted environmental regulators. Soon, independent surveyors were dispatched to inspect the site. The town council suddenly became nervous. The developers insisted everything was a misunderstanding. They claimed any discrepancies were simple clerical errors. But the evidence kept growing. Survey teams confirmed that protected land had indeed been excluded from official submissions. Historical records matched Ethan's observations almost perfectly. The young boy's notebook contained years of information that authorities could verify. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something even bigger. Internal emails revealed that certain project officials had known about the boundary issues for months. Instead of correcting them, they had quietly moved forward. The scandal exploded. Local news stations covered the story. Residents who had once ignored Ethan now praised his persistence. People couldn't believe that a 12-year-old had uncovered what experienced officials had missed, or ignored. Public pressure mounted. State regulators launched a formal investigation. Construction permits were suspended. Several council members faced ethics inquiries. The development company suffered enormous financial losses. And it all traced back to one notebook. One hand-drawn map. And one kid who refused to stay silent. Months later, the project was officially cancelled. Willow Creek Nature Preserve remained protected. The wetlands were preserved. The community celebrated. At a special town gathering, hundreds of residents came together to honor Ethan. The same council chamber where people had laughed at him was now filled with applause. The mayor stepped to the podium. His voice carried a hint of embarrassment. "We were wrong to dismiss Ethan." The crowd nodded. Because everyone knew it was true. The people in power had overlooked something important. Not because the evidence wasn't there. But because they underestimated who brought it forward. When Ethan was invited to speak, the room became silent. He looked around nervously. Then smiled. "I guess maps are useful after all." The crowd erupted with laughter and applause. But the lesson went far beyond maps. Sometimes the person who notices the truth isn't the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes they don't have a title. Or a degree. Or influence. Sometimes they're just a kid paying attention while everyone else is looking the other way. And sometimes that kid changes everything. Because truth doesn't care how old you are. And neither does courage. That hand-drawn map didn't just save a nature preserve. It exposed corruption. Protected a community. And reminded an entire town that wisdom can come from the most unexpected places. The people who laughed at Ethan never forgot that lesson. And neither did he.